There still exists a largely invisible story of America, how African and Native peoples came together across space and time to create shared histories, communities, and ways of life. Through centuries of struggle, slavery, and dispossession, then by self-determination and freedom, African American and Native American peoples have become, more often than publicly recognized, indivisible.
Can we say that Jimi Hendrix, look, that's a new thing.
That's the
Cherokee, by the way.
Yeah, and James Earl Jones was Choctaw. Let's get an idea before we start the classes at PS 298. Let's deal with how we want to bring it into the classroom. Let's deal with how we want to structure this program for them. We know we call it the Middle Passage Program Slave Narratives from a Black Indian's point of view, but my thought is, how do we want to present it to the classrooms? How do we want to define Black Indian?
It's such a play on words because you want to talk about an African person of Native descent or a Native person of African descent, or I would tend to think from my perspective, someone who's culturally rooted in both particular cultures. The fact remains that many of us, including who we're looking at each other right now, do have cultural ties within both communities. And humanity being what it is, there's certainly pluses and negatives about that. And we're not talking about utopia, we're talking about some real human conditions. And the fact that slavery feeds into this definitely is a testimony to that.
Because Black Indians, from a slave narrative, is not taught in schools at all. People have no idea the coalition between Africans and indigenous people or Native people. My name is Stephen Wilson, and I am from an organization, TWW Inc. I am the CEO and founder of the organization, otherwise known as Talks with Wolves. And we are a non-for-profit organization. We are now focusing in our part 2 of our documentary Middle Passage program with the junior high school students at PS 298. And this Middle Passage program documentary deals with slave narratives from the Black Indians, people of African and Native ancestry from the Caribbean islands, South America, and here in North America. What we're doing is focusing the kids' energies and learning a different style and history of Black culture, and using the arts as that foundation to entice them to do better. This program, I believe, is highly important for the students and for ourselves as teaching artists. The kids are losing interest. Our graduation rates have dropped among the Black community, especially among the young Black men. So we wanted to give a program to them that would challenge them not only about what they know historically, but about themselves, getting prior to who they are and their past history. We don't believe the school system is really doing that in its full matter. So with the Middle Passage program, it's a middle passage for them. But what's important about it is make them part of the history. Hands-on. Make them really just part of that whole history.
My name is Saida Banks, and I've been teaching for 100 years. I look pretty good, don't I? So I'm here, and we're going to do a project through the TWW, Talk with Wolves, where we're correlating the arts and talking about our ancestors and slave narratives, and we're incorporating them with other people in history that we're connected with, and particularly in this one, the Native Americans. Now, they claim Columbus discovered America, but people were living here. So our first project, when I come back on Monday, is going to be what I call the Heritage Mask. It's done on your face. You're going to work in 2 teams, partner A, partner B. Partner A will be the one to cut it up. Partner B will be the one that we rub Vaseline all over the face, which helps it slide off. And you cut little gauze, you dip it in water, and press it on the face, and you capture all of the features. The homework assignment is how are you going to decorate it? Mask would tell a story about that tribe. It may tell something of their financial status, if they were married, if they were wealthy. But we're going to look at it as a cultural project. So I'm going to leave it up to you. When people look at your mask, what will your mask tell them about you?
Okay. Only people who have been fitted are on stage. If you were not fitted, and hold. Okay, now you know why you can't do it? Look what you're wearing. That's another thing I told them. You cannot dance in shoes and boots in this show. It's not going to happen. You can't dance like that. Try to tell you that in the beginning. Now, I don't know what Ms. Rogers does to you, but I never teach class with anybody wearing shoes, sneakers. Yeah. 5, 6, 5, 6, 7, and forward. And I think the most important thing as artists is that we can introduce what we have, what we share to the students, and hopefully it'll unlock something that's in them. And perhaps they won't re-enslave themselves, because that's what we see. People are enslaving themselves. Before, someone else put the shackles on our feet, you know, or on our hands, but now we're doing it to ourselves. This is Veronica, everyone. Veronica is the vocalist for Wade in the Water. Look at that.
She did a lot of work with it today. I was going to cry, but I'm not going to cry.
Ooh, you heard that? You heard that? See, that work pays off, doesn't it? Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that man all dressed in red. God's gonna trouble the water.
It's important to have the elders to teach you that. I was blessed as a child. I sat at the feet of my grandparents. As a child, I was especially blessed. I sat at the feet of my great-grandparents, who were in their 90s, and they told me the stories about when they were young. And it's not always possible to have that direct connection. So what I encourage young people to do who may not have grandparents or grandparents is to seek people of that age, of that generation, and to sit down and listen, because their stories are our stories.
1, 2, 3.
My name is Veronica White. I go by the name of V. Denisa Monk. I live in Brooklyn. I'm raised in Queens. The consistent things in my life is the arts and children. So that's who I am. That's what I'm always going to be doing. I just think they need to be exposed to more. It doesn't really take much to ignite the enthusiasm in a child.
Johnny Rock is my name. I am a human being on the planet, you know? But I mean, I've always been involved. I've taught on my own, freelance. I've done workshops on my own, you know? And so, I mean, I've always been involved in it, you know? Drum and dance and the voice and the spirit, it's spiritual.
When they walk around sleep like that, that's because they don't remember who we are. Because we would never walk around like that, zoned out on donuts and...
Ooh, talk about that sugar, that sugar, and that chewing gum. First thing in the morning, oh my God.
Sugar
and then the diet, the mental diet in the evening, what they watch on television.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you know, and they come back and they try it out on each other.
It's low energy. They're surrounded by low energy. They're in the low energy field, man. Low energy.
Yes.
So when they see
when they get this energy, it's
cell memory.
Right.
It talks to their DNA.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
So
It does.
they remember this. They just forgot.
Yes.
I'm Tony Howell, and I am a human being also. Yet I am of the African world, born and raised in the United States. Okay, but very touched by the Afro-Caribbean culture and West African culture.
I'm Veronica White, stage name V. Denisa Monk. I am a citizen of the universe. I just happen to be visiting right now.
Banga Lafia, Ashe, Ashe. Banga Lafia, Ashe, Ashe. Banga Lafia, Ashe, Ashe. Banga Lafia, Ashe, Ashe. Peace be with you. All right.
Yahoo, 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 hey, Yahoo, Yah, yo, hey, yo, Yahoo, hey, yo, Yahoo, hey.
My name is Gabrielle Tayak. I'm a member of the Piscataway Indian Nation. I'm a historian here at the National Museum of the American Indian, and my role in the project was to be a coordinating curator. Jimi Hendrix, who, like many African Americans, has a family history, a family oral history of Native ancestry, in particular African ancestry. And then historical figures like Crispus Attucks, who is known as the first martyr of the American Revolution from 1770, very clearly and proudly and rightly identified as an African American hero. But what's lesser known is that his mother was a Natick Indian and that his surname Attucks means deer in an Algonquian language. There's so many children now on reservation areas and in urban areas that carry this mixed heritage, and to have them feel very proud of that, to never have to deny or keep secret any part of themselves. This is all for our children. I don't want ever to again, be part of a society that puts our little kids down. You know, we have to embrace all of them and in all of our communities. In the United States alone, there's there's more than 500 Native nations. There's probably about 700 of them. Throughout the Western Hemisphere, there's 2,000 distinct indigenous societies, each with their own language, culture, lifeway, government. And the points of very early contact between African people and Native people are right in New York, right?
All right, so let's go back into, as we're dealing with how we're structuring different ideas on how to bring it to the classrooms and talk about it, because there's so much, you know, again, and we're talking about introducing to children that are the students that the school system does not teach this type of education, historical, which I have yet to understand why.
Some of the things I'm going to say today are controversial. Do you know what that word means? No. Okay, it means that, let's say a professor might come in and get into a very big argument with me.
Now, when you hear the word black Indians, people go, well, Indians were dark-skinned people. That's not actually the proper definition. Black Indians mean people, the indigenous people from the islands, Caribbean islands, or here from the States, the First Nations, the American Indian, who are also mixed with African culture.
Let me ask us, anyone here have Native American ancestry that you know of? Just raise your hand. It's from Jamaica? Okay, then you might have some Taino or Carib ancestry. With all due respect to the African relations, we must remember that the first victims of the transatlantic slave trade were the Tainos. When I say October 12th, 1492, What does that mean to you?
It's supposed to be when Christopher Columbus discovered that it was land in the Americas.
And it's interesting you use that word supposed to have discovered. He discovered he was lost, first of all. My own opinion, because I'm a man of African and Native American ancestry, that day to me means is significant because it means the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade and the beginning of the invasion of the hemisphere.
Here are the islands here. You have the Dominican Republic and that little rough draft of it. Here's Europe, here's Africa, North America, South America. The islands are here. When Christopher Columbus first landed on the islands, I said Haiti and Dominican Republic, those were the Taino people. And what he did was, through those conquering from there, the slave trade actually started trickling through the islands. So what happened at one point was they had slave ports, training the slaves and working them at the same time. Through Dominican Republic / Haiti, when the uprising came against the Spaniards during slave trade, by that time they had started to move down to the other islands. When they started getting away from the islands, getting away from the plantation as slaves and having these uprisings, what they did was they were bringing slaves from Africa to replace the slaves that was from the islands originally. So from here, they brought them to the islands and become the next slaves from that point. What they started doing was the natives that were slaves, they were taking African men and making them mate with native women that have these very unique children.
During the early part of the transatlantic slave trade, you had a shortage of African women being victimized. And I'm very hesitant to use the term slaves taken from Africa, because we had people that were taken from Africa, okay? We had merchants, we had kings, queens, everyday people. They weren't slaves until they got here and enslaved, so we have to be careful about that play on words.
You talk about the coming of two nations and all the different nations that Africa represents.
My point is, Africans and Native American peoples interacted a long, long time ago. Some of the things that Professor Ivan Van Sertima has discovered, there were 9 statues between 3 great cities during the Olmec Empire, and the Olmecs were some great people that rose up long before the birth of Christ. But 14 of these statues, and some were 6 feet, some were 9 feet, weighing several tons, were head of African warriors. But most mainstream history books won't tell you this, but the research is there.
Interestingly, most people who do Native studies have completely dismissed Ivan Van Sertima. Others feel that there is some possible value to it. People are still really debating this quite clearly. It was interesting, even in the development of this exhibition, what we found was people in Native studies didn't even want to mention it because they also felt that to question the ability of Native Americans to create complex cities without outside influence was inherently racist. And then from the flip side, people sometimes coming more from an African American side were saying, well, are you saying that it's not possible, for example, that the Malian fleet could have arrived?
He talked about there was evidence, and in fact, South American coca leaves were found in the sarcophagi of Egyptian mummies. So, if we're talking about a plant that's very indigenous to this particular part of the world, going out back before the time of Christ, ending up in the sarcophagi, okay, certainly long before frequent flyer models.
In general, Van Sertima's work has been seriously questioned for its information, but that doesn't preclude the possibility that there were earlier encounters, and so we're really interested in seeing what other kinds of research could be done to support his assertions, or others, for example, like the Malian fleet arriving seems to be quite possibly plausible, but the evidence still hasn't held up through academic debate.
What is the name of the island that Columbus landed on? Anybody know? No, that's second. And Haiti actually comes from a Taino word, but that's the second place he landed. The first place he landed, anybody know the name of that? Name me the real name of the island Columbus landed on, and who are the people he came in contact with. Unfortunately, that's been covered up and forgotten by history. But everybody repeat after me, Guanahani. Guanahani. Okay, because there were people that lived there. That's what they called their island. The whole school system was set up to maintain the status quo. And now I'm interested as somebody who works in arts and education. But again, my point was, like, when you talk about the 5 civilized tribes and who were doing the enslaving among those tribes, let's look at those particular factions. This dynamic would also play out later during the American Civil War, when we had factions that would sign treaties with the Confederate States of America versus Apache elder, who's very, very dark-skinned. He's been told by some other Apache elders during his boyhood in the Southwest, they looked at him, they went, Maya, Maya. And again, if we look at some of the pictographs among the Maya, we see some very dark-skinned, and some instances, black-skinned men represented in those pictures. So if we're talking about multi-ethnic peoples, people from Africa and what we now call the Middle East, which are parts of Africa, by the way, what exactly are we talking about? And if we look at the roots of, quote unquote, the Jewish religion, again, from that particular part of the world, again, what are we talking about?
Even through religion beliefs, it's showing the culture. It's just how you read it. It's how you see it. To me, religion is telling the history of the people.
I remember when I was about 10 years old, I went to an Indian powwow. And a powwow is where Native Americans get together and they sing and dance and eat food and have a good time. And I was there with some other young people, and I was approached by a native person who said, "Excuse me, young man, what tribe do you belong to?" And I said, "Tribe? What do you mean?" I said, "Well, where are you people from?" And I said, "Well, my people come from Puerto Rico." He said, "Oh, you're Taino." And I said, "Yeah, I guess so." That started off a chain of events where I began studying who I was and where I came from. When I talk to people, I try to dispel stereotypes, misconceived notions about Native people. When most people hear the term Native American, they think about people like the Mohawks, the Navajo, the Lakota. And they're surprised to learn that more than 90% of Native people come from Latin America. There are more than 40 million so-called Indian people from Central and South America and the Caribbean. And many of us are mixed with African blood. Because when we sing, when we dance, when we act, when we tell stories, it is not just us telling the story, singing the song, dancing dances. It's also our ancestors, those who walk with us because they never leave us. And we have to always remember that life is a circle, and our past is our present, is our future.
And my regalia is basically Northern Cheyenne regalia. Originally, the Northern Cheyennes were from the Great Lakes, so this illustrates Great Lakes style regalia with the long breechcloth. And this right here is actually the Cheyenne tribal flag. It's called the Morning Star, okay, and it's represented by the 4 directions and the star. And also traditional Cheyenne, we have a color called Cheyenne pink.
We cannot deny our past, and the only way we can have a real productive future is to embrace that past and bring it into the present and take it to the future and pass it on to our children and the ones who will come after them.
And she is wearing a traditional, what's called an elk tooth dress.
Our job is to get the people to understand about who we are as a whole, people of color, and that we cannot accept just one part of who we are. You can't accept your mom and not accept your dad. We're not made up. Our DNA states that it demands, ancestors demand that we accept all that we are and what we represent. And once we do that, we can really, as a people, go to the next step forward and say, okay, now we can really push forward and say, this is who we are as a whole, and we're more powerful than we think we are.
Ladies and gentlemen, PS 298 and PS 150 wish to welcome you to East New York, Brooklyn. Good evening. Welcome to PS 298 with the sister school PS 150 on the Middle Passage program, Slave Narratives. This program is very significant in many different forms and many different fashions. Students here are going to show you their work, and you're going to experience their transformation. The slave narratives you will hear tonight, the students wrote. The dance performance you will see is all their energy and their hard work.
What we wanted to do in this program was just give the kids a different avenue of learning. Get them to understand history from a different way of teaching it. And they enjoyed it. You know, they really got their hands into it. It was something new for them, and it wasn't the same old every day coming to school, you have a protocol that you follow, and you knew exactly what was going on. Every time we came to them, they were excited because they was like, okay, what's coming at us next? And it was something for them to just kind of rethink about their own history.
So they feel good.
What makes you feel good? That they were lynched?
No, that I could write and know about what happened during that time.
The point is simply to get them more into reading, writing, and really self-confidence about who they are as an individual, as a group working together, and cultural awareness.
But what the slaves did was, as part of the once they were in the plantations, they had ways for them to get away. And what they did was, they had codes that they used. You'll learn about those codes in a few seconds. Codes in either a blanket or even in song.
They took the sick and the dead, and they tossed them into the ocean like empty wine barrels. But wine barrels did not have beating hearts, crying eyes, and screaming mouths. I think often of those ancestors of ours whose names we will never know.
How do we enact the process of decolonization? How does it mean that we get to a sense of freedom personally and as a society?
But I always feel my ancestors are with me, and because I'm telling their story, a story that should not be forgotten.
I believe that as people of color, we should know all of our history in all the different angles, and really understand what it is that we are.
Africa is my father's home. Africa, oh, where I want to go. Africa, we want to go home.
It's true. Slaves, they didn't just lay down belly up and just be slaves. They was escaping. They was running away. They was destroying property. They was doing anything they could do to let folks know they were not pleased with the situation. They had these things that, you know, quilts, blankets, and they would use different patterns, different designs, and different styles to give different signals that whether it's time for a slave escape to happen that night, or whether it was time to run across the open field to get in the house that's hiding you. Now that one wasn't exactly made for the slaves to escape, but that was a pattern that was really popular back then, and they called it shoe fly. And we used it because shoe fly make you think about flying away to freedom. So when you see the slave, the house slave, she'd go outside and hang the wet quilt on the banister to dry, because she'd wash it, because she went to town with the master and she heard from another slave who heard from another slave that tonight the conductor's coming through. And anybody who's ready, they better be ready. I wanna be ready. I wanna be ready. I wanna be ready. Lord, ready. Hold on. Yes, I wanna be ready. I wanna be ready. I wanna be ready. Lord, ready. Hold on.
Now, this next dance, a little bit more high-spirited, for those who survived. Because you know, again, what happened. If you got caught, sometimes you got your foot cut off, as she said. Other times, your family got sold off. Price you pay for freedom, because freedom ain't free. This next dance, especially with the brothers coming out representing, we got to see them do their move. Come on out.
What is Africa to me? Copper sun, a scarlet sea. Jungle star, a jungle track. Strong bondsman, a regal black. Woman from whose loins I sprung, when the bird of Eden sung. 3 centuries removed from the scenes his father loved. Spicy groves, cinnamon trees. What is Africa to me? Jingle, jingle bell.
I would like to introduce someone you have grown up with. Refuse to acknowledge who has made the life you know possible. Hello, my relatives. I am the Indian in your living room. I am the First Nations, the original inhabitants of Turtle Island. I am the great law of peace. I am the plan for the U.S. Constitution, given you by the clan mothers of the Iroquois Federation. I am political freedom, free speech, equality, and freedom of assembly, which you claim as part of being an American. I am the Delaware who allowed Washington's troops to survive the winter at Valley Forge. I am the caretaker of Mother Earth. I am the Indian in your living room. Coming from East New York, these kids are used to a certain atmosphere, certain surroundings, and try to get them out of that. And I'm not even going to say try them, or getting them out of that. There was a lot of work, getting their minds set on something different. So when we put it all together, they finally see that they are part of the whole pie, and it makes them feel even better. They are part of such a big production. Every student is different. Every student is different. If you have 30 kids in the classroom and you're teaching a certain program or project to them, expect 30 different minds to comprehend it in 30 different ways, and being able to connect with all of them.
solemn observance. The sun hangs low in the sky as they set out. They bear objects of veneration, sacred stones, blessed feathers, hallowed blood. Ceremonies rooted in ancient times, ceremonies sensitive to the seasonal turnings of the earth. Secrets unveiled in silence and in solitude. A young apprentice is initiated by the giver of life. Esoteric knowledge bestowed by the ones above, the dark cave is illuminated by the light of distant dreams. A worthy woman stands in the heart of a dimly lit chamber. With arms raised to the heavens, she intones a chant so powerful that the floor of the forest reverberates. The open circle of four converges on the flames that consume a mosaic of offerings. These selected men pay homage to the clear-eyed daughter of the traveling moon. The communal dance fulfills a cycle of rediscovery. Age-old stories are retold in whispers, and the life of one more generation is sustained as the smoke rising from the mounds of dying embers purifies the walls of the voiceless cavern, and the stars stand guard over the enchanted dawn which awakens on the cloud that rises above the fire.